Morning, everyone who's promptly turned up. Thank you for that. I'm just going to give it literally another minute and then we're going to get started. I know you're there waiting. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this second of two webinars that I'm running on bidding and tendering. For those of you who were here last week, you'll know it's all part of the Hammersmith and Fulham Fit to Bid program, which is really all designed to help you as local businesses get more experience at bidding and tendering and give you a greater chance of winning a bigger share of contracts, both with the council and with private sector organisations. This is the last of the webinars we'll be running under the programme, so let's have a great one, go out with a bang. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Noshir Desai. I'll tell you a few bits and pieces about me in a moment, and essentially commit to do something as a result of what you hear this morning. I like to think that there'll be a positive action you'll take as a result of what you hear. So make that commitment to yourself in terms of taking your business forward, and make your own notes as you go along, of course. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. I'll try and answer those as we go along, and also we'll probably have a few minutes at the end. So let's get started. So just briefly, for those of you who don't know me, Noshir Desai, background in banking for my since 30 years, looking at all sorts of businesses, right from startups through to larger international organizations, and also spent 4 years heading up the government team for Lloyds, where I got a lot of my bidding and tendering experience, because we were bidding and tendering for both local authority and central government department contracts, new and renewal. I work for Brandywin. We're running the programme on behalf of the council, and I've been involved in a number of these programmes, delivering both one-to-ones and these types of webinars. And in terms of keeping my heart warm and doing something good for the community, I also have a small social care business I run locally, looking after old people. So that's my 40 years condensed into a minute. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, so this morning, as I said, is the second of two webinars which we're running all around improving your bidding and tendering skills. It's based on the principles of best practice. So I'll be sharing best practice tips that I've come across, that me and my team have come across when we're talking to various different businesses. And it's all about selling as well. As I always say, the bidding and tendering process is not an administrative task. There is an element of admin, of course, as there is in any tender or bid, but you have to treat it as an exercise in selling. You're selling yourself, you're selling your service, you're selling your offer, you're selling the value of what you provide to the organization. So always keep that at the forefront of your mind. If you treat it as an admin exercise, you're really going to be probably not on the way to producing a strong winning bid. So we covered some of the things last week. I'll just briefly touch on those. We looked at things like why organizations go to tender, looked at the basics. I started to introduce to you what makes up a winning bid, which is a combination of what I call the golden rules and basically understanding objectives, articulating benefits, and we'll run through these things during the session today, some of which, as I said, we did cover last week. And for those of you who've missed any of the previous webinars, they are all recorded and they're available on our YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and refresh your memory and look at things that perhaps you wanted to check up on, then they're all there and available for you. And that's the link below. So who are Brandywin? Essentially, we are a leading group of business advisors in London and the South East. We work with local government, we work with chambers of commerce, growth hubs, and entrepreneurial hubs, and we work with SMEs of all shapes and sizes, right from startup and inception through to more experienced SMEs. What is somewhat unique, we believe, about us as advisors, there's about 20 of us in the team, is we have obviously technical understanding and knowledge, but also we all run our own businesses. So we know what the challenges are that you face in your own businesses. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen on the right that we have a number of proprietary programs we run as well. This obviously being the Fit to Bid program, and there are various other programs we run as well. So a whole host of support for you and your business, hopefully. So let's just talk and remind ourselves a little bit about what's available under the program. Like I always say and said last week, when you're dealing with a larger organization, whether it's a public sector organization or a private sector company, you'll typically engage with a procurement department. So you won't be necessarily dealing with the end user. And that's an important point to remember, because you'll be dealing with evaluators. So you need to know how to handle that and understand what they're looking for. And I will share those things with you. For those of you who haven't done it, we've got an online bid capability assessment questionnaire. It'll take you a few minutes to complete, and it allows us to see what's your state of preparedness in terms of bidding and tendering. Of course, we'll share with you tips and techniques on improving your bidding skills. And as I said a moment ago, it's very much a sales process. So keep that at the forefront of your mind, please. And there are also these tender advice sessions. They're one-to-one specialist sessions, and I'll talk more about those in a moment. So a lot of support available to you. Here are some of the benefits for the program. Of course, we'll help you with your bid writing skills. I'll share with you, my team will share with you best practice standards. The one-to-one advice sessions are personalized. They're personalized to you and your business in terms of the challenges you're facing, both with bidding and tendering, and perhaps with some of your wider business challenges. We'll help you to get to a point where you can submit expressions of interest, obviously support you with writing your bids. Also, we'll look at your wider business using a technique called the business model canvas. And it's a very succinct and simple but powerful way of analyzing your business on one page. We'll look at your value proposition, how are you tangibly adding value to the organizations, how are you defining that? And there is engagement throughout the program. It's not just a one-off session that you never hear from us again. There'll be regular and ongoing feedback. So do make the most of it while the program's still running. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick summary for those of you who weren't here last week, or if you were, as a reminder, what we covered in part one. I won't spend too much time on it. I started to introduce to you some of the ideas of why organizations go to tender. We looked at things like getting a fair and objective comparison, minimizing supplier risk, achieving the right price, a competitive price, not necessarily the cheapest price, delivering, of course, a return on investment. How you as an organizer, how you as a supplier provide innovative solutions to improve efficiencies. Matching their culture, finding partners who culturally fit with their values and behaviors, and having an open communication style. So there are lots of reasons why companies go to tender. We looked at some of the basics. These are, I guess, the administrative parts of the tender process, but you have to go through that process to get through the first hurdle. So we looked at the paperwork, things like supplier questionnaires, accounts, making sure you provide references, tell your references in advance, pick referees that hopefully reflect similar work that you've done on contracts which you're applying to bid for now. We talked about the importance of planning, very, very key, making sure you allow enough time, allocating responsibilities, working to a deadline the day before you need to submit your tender. And we looked a bit about understanding questions and objectives, and another key point, researching a client, where to look for information, what to look for, because the more you know about your client, the better you'll be in terms of producing a winning bid. So that's just really a quick summary of the things we touched upon last week. So I started to introduce to you some concepts and some ideas in terms of what produces a winning bid. And it's a combination of the right price, and as I say, not necessarily the cheapest price. So you need to know your market, you need to know your competitor market, what value you're adding, and then what I call the golden rules. We looked at how you make sure you directly answer questions in accordance with the evaluation criteria, which we touched upon. understanding those broader needs and objectives of the organization, not understanding just what they're doing now, but what are their future aspirations, what are they looking to do in 12, perhaps 18 months. We talked about how you demonstrate a credible, competent solution. How do you prove you can do what you say you can do? We'll talk about benefits. It's all well and good telling an organization what you can do, but the key is, what does that mean for the local authority? What does that mean for the organization? How does it help them improve a process, reduce costs, improve efficiencies? We'll look at evidence today. How do you back up what you say? Because that's very powerful. And then finally, how do you write in a concise, clear, and precise way? So those are the elements, the price and the golden rules that make up the elements of a winning bid. And what we're going to cover this morning is those last 4 areas that are in red boxes. So lots to get through, but lots of interesting stuff for you, hopefully. Okay, so here's the first picture, an analogy for you. So if you're planning, if you're going to climb a mountain, you wouldn't think today, okay, Thursday today, is it? Okay, going to climb a mountain on Saturday, off we go. You'd think about it. You'd look at the weather conditions. You might look at basically who's done it before, what route they took, what obstacles they've faced, what sort of equipment do you need, you know, what's the right approach. And basically, what I'm trying to say there is you need to, it's an analogy to show you need to plan how you're going to do it and be able to articulate that clearly to the client. So demonstrate your thought process and be able to explain it clearly to the client in terms of how you're going to meet your objective. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So the overarching question, as I say, it is the how. It's demonstrating your planning and thought process and approach when you're articulating your solution. It's the overarching key question. So look at basically the various elements of how you're going to do what you say. Who's going to do certain parts of the contract? Is it you? Do you have a partner that works with you? Do you subcontract some of the work? Who's going to undertake specific roles? Use names if possible. I mean, it's just personalize it, makes it a bit more real. What individuals are going to own certain parts of the process? What's your approach? What steps will you take? What methodology, what processes have you got in place to show you'll be able to get to the right end product? Like I used in my analogy, what materials, what equipment do you need? What tools you need to be able to deliver? Will you provide some sort of SLA, a service level agreement, which has predefined standards about what you're going to do? And what are the key timelines, milestones in terms of when things are going to be done? Have you got that scheduled in to a process? Do you have project management methodology you've used, or something simple, like I mentioned last week, even an Excel spreadsheet with key dates, with key milestones as to what needs to be done by when? What's the frequency of what needs to be done? What's the delivery timetable? The better and more clearly you can explain it, the more compelling your answer and your bid will be. And where are you going to carry out this work? Is it going to be at the client's location? Do you have an off-site facility? Perhaps there's a team member where you'll be doing it. What's the geographic distribution of your solution? Does the client have a number of sites? You need to plot them on a map. You know, where are they located? The more detail you go into, the more you can demonstrate how you're going to do it, the more compelling, the more believable your bid will be. And then finally, your why. What's the rationale of the process that you've taken, and what other options have you considered? Why have you chosen this particular option? What other options have you discounted? Have you got evidence? Have you linked what you can do to benefits, to the value you add to the client? So as you can see, the more you can demonstrate in detail how you're going to approach and deliver, the more compelling, the more believable your bid will be. So keep that in your mind. Okay, let's move on and talk about USP, Unique selling proposition. How do you stand out from your competition? What makes you different? Because the word unique is often used too commonly. People talk about things like it's partially unique, it's fairly unique, but it's not. It's either unique or it's not. And you can see from the definition, unique means of which there is only one. It's unmatched, unequaled, having no like, equal, or parallel. So it's different. When I talk to a number of businesses and we talk about USPs, often a business will say to me, we provide great customer service. Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, that is not a USP, because I've never spoken to a business who doesn't say they provide good or great service. They don't say we provide a very average service. They all say we provide great service. So it's not really unique. However, a client I was speaking with and dealing with about a year ago, he had something along those lines, which was much more compelling. So he had in his business more 5-star Google reviews than any of his competitors. Now that is unique, that is different, that helps you stand out from your competition. So it's quite difficult to find things that are truly unique, but you can overcome that lack of uniqueness, if that's the right word, by being innovative in terms of your approach to a standard procedure. So what I mean by that, for example, is when I was in the bank many years ago, we had a standard where we answered our phone within 4 rings. You might have a standard that says, we'll get back to you in terms of any messages left within 3 hours, 4 hours, same day. So if you can show a way where you can do a standard approach better, differently, in a more efficient way than your client, then that will stand you out in terms of being unique. And it's a positive, what you call a positive discriminator. And it shows that you've thought about it and you have innovative solutions that are different, because that's what you're trying to do during all these processes in tendering, is stand out and be better from the competition. So that's all good stuff, but so what? Your proposition, your bid response has to pass this so what test. So the point I'm making there is, how will your solution make things better for the client? Will it save time? Will it reduce costs? Will it improve a process? Will it improve staff morale? What's the benefit? What's the added value of what you bring in terms of your solution? So let's get you to do a little bit of work now. I think, like all these webinars, all these things in life, the more you put in, the more you get out. So do get involved with these exercises. We'll give you a minute or so to do them. So think about, firstly, generally, what benefits does your solution have? What's different about you? And can you explain how you add value? So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Pop some information in the chat. One good way of thinking about benefits is explain what you do and then link it to the phrase, which means that. So you might say something like, we've worked on a similar contract, which means that we've adapted our solution for you to make it even more cost effective. So that's an example. So pop some stuff in the chat. Don't be shy, and let's spend a minute doing that. And then I'll run through some benefits that I've seen from the conversations I've had, which you can include. But think about it from your own business perspective. What are the benefits of your solution? And how do you explain that added value? Don't be shy, people. Do put something in the chat. I can give you the answers, which I will do, of course. But I want you to try and think about it from the perspective of your own business, because that's much more powerful than generic information. So don't be shy. There's no trick questions here. What are the benefits of your solution? How do you articulate the value? Could be that you're cheaper. Could be that you have a flexible service. Could be there's something unique about your offer. What are those benefits of your solution. Someone's taken the bait. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great, Cameron. Thank you. Better equipped with advanced technology. So you have a competitive advantage because you can do things perhaps quicker, faster, more efficient. Absolutely. What else have you got, people? I'll just give you 30 seconds. Don't be shy. There are no wrong answers here. You know your businesses, you know the benefits of what you provide, and hopefully you're able to articulate it. So, you know, that's all else you should have a think about at this point. Yeah, a unique method, absolutely. And that goes back to the how, I suppose. A unique method of delivering your offer, a unique method of delivering your solution. So yes, if you can articulate that, if you can explain that in a way that's different to your competition, that's a benefit without a shadow of a doubt. One more to get through from anyone before I move on. Okay, then we'll move on. We'll move on. So let's just have a look at some of the primary benefits that a solution can or should have. Not all of them necessarily. Things like saving management time. You know, as business owners, that all management are always busy. So if you can show them a way of saving time, fantastic. Everyone's up against cost constraints, aren't they? So if you can demonstrate a reduction in cost or eliminating a particular cost, fantastic. Reducing risk, improving staff morale, growing turnover. These are all ways of demonstrating that you can provide a benefit. Can you drive up and improve productivity, improve their margins, reduce waste? That's a key one, which is gathering much more prominence, I suppose, in terms of the environment, you know, in terms of plastic reduction. Do you have an environmentally friendly benefit that you can demonstrate? Can you improve service quality levels? These are all primary benefits and they're useful, but what makes it much more powerful is if you can demonstrate a way of measuring the benefit. Can you show a way how your benefit tangibly adds value? So if you can do that, in addition to saying what the benefit is, it gives a much greater perception of value. So think about that. If you can demonstrate and measure benefit, it's going to stand you out from the competition. So let's move on. So what we've done, to recap briefly, we've started to understand the requirements, we've read the questions properly, we've started to do our research, spoken to the client, started to explain how we'll build needs, explain the benefits. How do you then make your story more believable? Because everyone's going to be saying what great things they can do. How do you back it up? Well, in simple terms, I guess it's like a court case, isn't it? You need to provide evidence. You need to give them something to believe, because people buy when they believe in things. So compelling evidence is critical to your argument in its simplest form. You know, when I go on holiday, I look up hotels on TripAdvisor before I go, I look up restaurants, and if I find lots of great reviews, you know, that gives me some comfort. We know we can't trust them all, but if you get a flavor from independent people, so clients of yours saying how good you are, that makes it much more believable. It makes it much more powerful in terms of your message. So, a slight aside, everyone likes a good story, right? So think about what's your story. And the first question is, if asked, what would your clients say about you? So I'll give you a moment to think about that. That's the first part of the question I want you to think about. What would they actually say? And the second part is, what would you want them to say? Hopefully it's the same thing. An example I can give you is I've got a friend of mine who used to be in banking. He moved and left the bank. He's now a handyman. And essentially, his USP, which might sound surprising, is that he does what he says. He turns up on time. He does a good job. He returns phone calls. This might sound obvious, but actually in the trade business, it's almost quite unique. So his clients all say great things about him in terms of what he does. So think about, as I said, what your clients would say about you? And hopefully, would it be what you want them to say? Because the power of clients saying how good you are is much stronger than you saying that yourself. Okay, so let's move on and look at another exercise all about evidence. So basically, what I'd like you to do now, again, popping some stuff in the chat, is how can you make what you say more believable? How can you back up the words that you've put in your bid? So again, I'll give you a minute or so and pop some stuff in the chat. I've given you some clues in terms of things like testimonials and reviews. So don't be shy, put some information in the chat, and then we'll run through some examples from my side. Yeah, someone's got the ball rolling. That's great. Thanks, thanks, Patricia. Yeah, add links to examples of your work. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Videos, particularly. Yeah, video technology is extremely powerful. So whilst case studies, reviews, testimonials are great, video testimonials, for example, much more powerful. I think in this modern day, people have got a fairly short attention span. So if you've got a 30-second video from a client saying how great you've done or an example of your work, that's fantastic. Yes, Ron, definitely. References, for sure, yep. Links to scientific literature and public projects backing up our method. Yeah, okay. Obviously, you're involved in something quite technical there. But yeah, if you can give any backing in terms of your methodology, whether that's your solution, whether it's the way you're going to manage the project. Yes, Cameron, fantastic. Statistics, absolutely right. This is all good stuff. The more that you can evidence what you say, the more powerful and believable your bid will be. Because essentially, when the evaluators are looking at bid responses, they haven't got a lot of time. So they'll look quickly at the question, they'll look quickly at what you said, they'll look for some evidence. If they haven't found the evidence, or it's not easy to find, you'll be struggling. Okay, so thank you, people, for getting involved with that. Let's run through a few examples in terms of evidence that we can provide. So firstly, we've touched upon it. The most powerful evidence is independent, objective evidence. So accreditations, are you ISO 9001 accredited, for example? Have you done, or have there been some third-party surveys carried out on you and your business? Have you got testimonials from clients? Someone mentioned references, absolutely. I was talking to a client yesterday. They'd won 3 awards for Best Local Business of the Year. Fantastically powerful. Are there articles in the press that have been written about you and what you've done? And in its strongest form, do you offer some form of financial guarantee if you don't deliver on what you say? So that independent, objective evidence is absolutely the most powerful because it comes from a third party. Then you've got business evidence. It's institutional evidence. It's stuff that you've built up yourself to a point. It's less strong because you've created it yourself, but it's absolutely still better than nothing. So you could have case studies from clients that you've worked with. You can demonstrate what's your operating process and procedure. That goes back to the how slide we were talking about. Do you operate to specific project management methodologies? So have you got processes with Gantt charts? Have you got structures to make sure and demonstrate you can effectively manage the sort of project that you're being asked to deliver? That's still powerful. Then you've got company evidence, information that you've produced on, for example, your marketing. You perhaps provided opinions on what you've done or opinions on things happening within your sector. You've taken out and carried out some customer surveys. It's things like your marketing material. Perhaps you've got evidence of your policies you have in place. That's critical, certainly within the public sector when you're bidding for contracts, because there'll be certain policy requirements that they'll need. They'll need a contingency plan, for example, and health and safety policy. Certainly one that's gaining much, much greater prominence is social value. So do you have a social value policy? What is it? How are you demonstrating that you're adding to the community, to the local borough? In terms of CVs, I wouldn't suggest you attach your CVs to tender responses, but you could have if you've got a team of 4 people who are going to be managing this project and delivering the service, you could certainly have as an appendix little 2-3 line bios of those people, and maybe even a picture. I mean, it just makes it more real if they can see a smiley, happy person who's going to be involved in that project. So this is information that you can produce yourself. Then you've got various forms of sector evidence. So this is non-exclusive. It's weak because others can rely on it. But if you're operating in a sector where they have certain standard industry procedures, then that's still good. You know, you may have standard service approaches. I talked earlier about service level agreements. You may have a specific SLA that you put in place to deliver on particular standards. Again, not as powerful as the independent evidence, but still better than nothing. So keep that in mind, because you can produce this sort of information, and it's, you know, within your own control. And then finally, you've got what I call operational or incumbent evidence. This is where you're the existing provider. You've got the contract already, and it's coming up for renewal. You should have lots of ammunition, lots of data that you can use to, again, back up why you should win the contract for a second time. So you'll have information about how you transitioned and implemented your solution. You may have some performance data over the period of the contract. You may have provided management information, some regular reports to the client to show how the project's going, how you're delivering it against agreed objectives. Hopefully you have some data in terms of their level of satisfaction, both from the end user client and perhaps other stakeholders in the business who are also involved. You can hopefully demonstrate how you've actually made some improvements, how you've added value. Did you have an innovative approach, and what positive impact did it have on the client's organization? Was it measurable? We know things always go wrong at some point during our business lives. So when issues and challenges came along, when there was a problem, how did you resolve it? How did you communicate? All these things, as an existing supplier, you've got as evidence, or you should have as evidence. So build that into your process when you've got the contract. And finally, hopefully you've got some recommendations and positive quotes and testimonials from clients, the client saying how things have worked. So in summary, there's a lot of evidence you can provide, some more powerful than others, but start building up that evidence before you get to the point of delivering your tender response. So you've got it, so it's ready to go, because it'll strengthen your case significantly when the bid is being evaluated. So then let's have a look at some rules for evidence. Firstly, it should be relevant. It should be relevant to the bid, the client, the market, and the service. So for example, if you're bidding for a contract in a local authority, and let's use an example as a social care contract because you're a social care provider. Well, have you done some work with other local authorities? I can tell you for a fact that when I was working in banking with local authorities, they all talk to each other. They get together for forums. So if you've done a great job for one authority, first of all, try and get them as a referee, absolutely, and then give that evidence of what you did. Make sure your evidence is up to date. So again, using my holiday TripAdvisor analogy, if I go on and have a look at a restaurant, a hotel, and there are loads of reviews, but they're all 6 months out of date, it immediately sends a bit of a red flag to me. I think, well, what's been happening in the last 6 months? If the reviews are recent, if they're current, if they're in the last 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I immediately think, oh, wow, there's some good things going on with that hotel, that restaurant. So spend time building up and developing your evidence. Include case studies and build this all into your planning process. I can't underestimate how important it is to plan your bid response thoroughly and carefully. Don't rush into it, because if you're going to do it, it's going to take time and effort. Do it well. Okay, so let's move on to the next golden rule. Now we're going to talk about writing styles. So Basically, what I'm saying here is, as the diagram shows, less is more. And there is a skill in doing this. And what I'll show you in the next few slides in terms of writing styles, it can be used in any written communication, so not just bids. So the key is to write clearly, accurately, and concisely. I'll give you a little example. Going back to my days of banking, we looked after some international banks between us. And every now and then, the chief executives of the banks would meet up. And one of my roles was to write a one-page executive brief of our relationship with the other bank. Well, let me tell you, the files for the client, for the bank that we were dealing with, could have been easily up to sort of 60, 90 centimeters deep. And basically, my role to condense the most pertinent information for the chief exec onto one A4 side of paper. So let me tell you, that is not easy. It's a skill, and it's a benefit for the person who's going to be evaluating your contract. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So I mentioned that the people looking at these tender responses are evaluators. They're human beings, they're all busy people. So they're not going to dig too hard to find out and see what you're trying to say. So the key thing for you is make their jobs as easy as possible. Make their life easier. Because the evaluators, it won't necessarily be their full-time job. They'll be doing that in addition to their day job. So make their job as easy as possible. Don't waste their time, don't distract them, don't put irrelevant information in there, because they'll appreciate a concise, clear, precise response. So writing in that style will make a big difference to you in your bid. So don't distract them with too much information. So let's look at some specific examples. So these are 6 key rules for writing, and it's all about the importance of using precise and clear language. So don't use metaphors, similes, figure of speeches, which you're used to seeing in print. So things like, it's raining cats and dogs, heart of gold, it just confuses. Write the way you speak. Someone told me that a long time ago. So for example, say, we'll show you how our proposed solution will reduce costs by 10%. Nice and clear. Rather than our leading edge methodology and option analysis will demonstrate increased efficiencies across your processes. I'm sorry, what does that mean? Never use long, wordy words when a short, simple, brief one will work. Be precise. Try not to use passive language when you can use active. And I'll give you an example of that in a moment. All these things will help you reduce the word count, because often you'll be restricted, particularly with public sector responses, to a certain number of words that you can use in particular sections. So they'll give you a restriction of 500, 250 words in a particular section. So if you can write in that clear, concise style, it'll help you, certainly. Don't use foreign words, don't use jargon. Think of a simple English everyday equivalent. Write for the person that you're addressing in terms of their experience. So example, there is, my son is an engineer, so if you're talking to him about stuff and it was an engineering issue, you're talking quite technical language. But if you're trying to explain it to me, I'm not an engineer, you'd have to use much simpler language. So be mindful of how you say things. Keep it clear, keep it concise. And regardless of all that I've just said, break any of those rules rather than saying anything that's just irrelevant. So don't pad out your response. Don't put things that you think, well, that might be useful, if it doesn't lead back specifically to the question you're being asked. So all ways of reducing and writing in a more clear style. Let's look at a few more things. So I said earlier, generally, don't use passive when you can use active. Let me give you a little example there. Firstly, active has less words. So the passive example there is Oliver Twist was written by Charles Dickens, 7 words. You can say that more powerfully in the active, which is Charles Dickens wrote Oliver Twist, 5 words, much more punchy. But of course, like every guide, there's always an exception to the rule. So in this case, the passive would be acceptable, and let me tell you why. So the passive is the opera singer was heckled by an onlooker in the crowd, but the active is an onlooker in the crowd heckled the opera singer. The reason that can be an exception is because the opera singer is the main focus of that sentence. So in that sense, the passive can be acceptable. But generally, use active, not passive styles of writing. Avoid jargon, avoid Americanisms, avoid hyperboles, which are things where you exaggerated figures of speech. You know, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. You know, I'll literally die if you don't stop using hyperboles incorrectly. They're exaggerated statements to create effects. Don't use those, you know. Also, avoid using random capitals. It just looks messy. It shouts at you too much. It's not, it distracts. I would avoid those where you can. And avoid writing things like we could, we would, we can, we propose to. Be powerful, be positive, be assertive. Say and use we will. And the other common error I often see is avoid using the plural when you're referring to companies and organizations. So, for example, you should say Branduin is running this workshop, not Branduin are running the workshop. So, a number of ways of keeping your writing style clear and concise. So, third exercise for you, ladies and gentlemen, to have a little go at, or have a little think about, if nothing else. You may not get time to do the whole rewriting of the passage, but have a quick read of that passage and think about what words are required and what words are superfluous and extra. So how could you reduce the word count of that paragraph there? I'll just give you 30 seconds to read it through. You don't have to write anything down in the chat, but I want you to give it some thought, and then I'll show you basically how you can reduce the word count down quite significantly, but still retain the message. So 30 seconds just to think about that. Okay, let's have a look. So before, the initial paragraph had 61 words. And essentially, the words that are in red are the key words. They're the words that have to be retained within a revised, slimmed down version of that paragraph to make sure the message retains the meaning. So 61 words to start with. And here's an example of reducing it by more than half, 27 words. So I'll just give you literally 10 seconds to read that. But you can see that there are fairly simple ways of being much more precise and much more accurate and reducing your word count just by taking out superfluous words which just pad out and aren't really necessary. Okay, so let's have a little look at a few more examples of how you can reduce word count. Removing redundant words, lean writing. I won't go through the whole lot. You're all very confident you can read, but you know, essentially down the left-hand side of the column in red, you've got the longer version, and then you've got a shorter version. So, you know, on a regular basis, regularly, during the time that, while, if at all possible, has an ability to, can. I won't read them all out, but you can see here that there are ways of simplifying and shortening what you say, which makes it more powerful, more punchy and clearer. Here are a few more examples. The words in red are superfluous. As an added bonus. Well, a bonus is something you get added out, isn't it? After careful scrutiny. Well, if you look at the definition of scrutiny, it's to look at something carefully. Disappeared from sight. Well, you know, disappearing means you can't see them. We'll entirely eliminate. Again, eliminating something means to completely get rid of it. The other one I quite like is it's mostly foreign imports. Well, you show me an import that isn't foreign, because the definition of an import is it's a service or good you get from another country. So there are many ways that you can take out these extra redundant words to make your writing style more punchy, more accurate, more powerful. So as I said, use fewer words, because the evaluators who are up against time, they'll appreciate it. So write accurately, positively, clearly. And that writing style is a potential differentiator between you and your competitors. Because I've seen this a number of times, the real temptation from suppliers to sometimes just put in as much as they can and think, oh, we'll just tell them a little bit about this as well, and that might be useful. Don't do that. Make sure you just answer the question thoroughly in all its parts, but using this clear, accurate, lean style. It will make a difference to your bid score and response. Okay, so to summarize basically what we've done in the 2 sessions, both today and last week, we've complied with the instructions. We've looked carefully at the ITT and we've answered all the questions carefully. We've answered that why you question. How are you standing out from your client? We've demonstrated an understanding. We've explained clearly our how, our approach. What are the benefits of our solution? How is your solution going to add value? And you priced it correctly. You've got a high quality submission. It's written professionally, it's succinct, but it's complete. You've had someone independently, doesn't mean independently from your company, or of course you can do, review it, to look and review the document to make sure you've answered the questions clearly, you've answered all elements of the question, and then it's written in a clear, concise style, and they also can look out for errors. You've written in accordance with the evaluation criteria to give you the best chance to score highly. You've structured your answers in a way that answers all parts of the question, and you provided that evidence to back up your case. And that slide is very powerful, because if you can do all those things in terms of your bid summary and your bid response, you're going to be well on the way to submitting a winning bid. It's not an exact science, but as I said last week, good, well-written bids will generally win you the contract. So take the time to plan and to do it properly. And the final golden rule is perhaps politically incorrect, but it's not the taking part that counts. It's the winning that matters. So as I just said, bid to win. Bid to make sure you give yourself the best possible chance of winning that contract. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where you can find opportunities. You may know some of these things. Hammersmith and Fulham, they use the portal Capital eSourcing, and there are also a number of other tender portals. The London Tenders one is one that a number of London boroughs use for advertising contracts. So get yourself registered on those portals if you haven't done so already, and then you'll get alerts. And as you can see down at the bottom, there are also various other websites and portals where tenders are advertised. But in addition to that, I've given you the details of Michael Farquharson, who's one of the key economic development people at the council. Build your relationship with the council if you're looking, or with the organisation you're looking to work with. I won't go into detail now. We talked about that last week. It's available on the YouTube recordings. But build your relationships with them before the tender, so they know you, they like you, they trust you. You start to build your brand, you start to build your reputation. So they're the places you can find opportunities. And again, let me just spend a few minutes. Hammersmith and Fulham's website is got a huge amount of information in terms of supplier definitions, what they're looking to spend. But here are some of the sort of key areas of spend for the council. So you can see the top 10 categories and the values that they spend at the moment. So these are the sort of areas where, you know, you need to think about your own business and how it fits into that. And the top 5 sectors you can see are things like capital refurbishment, restoration, repairs, maintenance, capital projects, waste management. And they've also tried in this slide to give you an idea of what are the closest local business sector types that could bid for those contracts. So it all goes back, as I said, to getting a relationship and understanding what the council will be putting out a tender in the next 6, 12, 18 months. You know, the bidding tendering process, if you're not experienced in it, give yourself the time to get yourself up to speed and build up all your ammunition, your case studies, your evidence, so that when you get to a point of bidding, you're going to be in a stronger position. This is the areas that they spend in terms of people categories. They have a very, you know, social care, independent living, and again, they've tried to show you what are the local closest business sectors that can support those sort of contracts which they're looking to fulfill. And then finally, a more granular breakdown of the categories where they bid and the sort of services that they need within those areas. So I'll just whiz through those quickly so you can just see there's a whole host of contracts that they'll be procuring during the next 12, 24 months. So start building up your knowledge, your understanding of what's going to be put out to tender. Okay, well, it's a bit sentimental for me because this is the last webinar of the program. The program ends at the end of February. There's been a combination of webinars, one-to-one support. Again, all of these webinars are available on our YouTube channel. If you know about the bid writing tenders sessions, of course, because I've just been talking about them. We have sessions on how to effectively use LinkedIn. We have sessions on the circular economy and developing partnerships. That is a key one, gaining greater prominence with, you know, SMEs at the moment. It's essentially a way of tackling global challenges like climate change, waste management, pollution, sustainability, recycling, better use of resources. And you might think, oh, as a small SME, I don't need to worry about that. But it's all about doing your bit and perhaps partnering up with others who can help you in that process. Because let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when you're bidding for any contract, there will be a sustainability angle to it. There will be a social value angle as well, of course. But if you can demonstrate that you have taken sustainability, waste management into account in your offer in terms of your solution, that will certainly stand you in good stead. And the other thing we ran very successfully about a month ago was a meet the buyer session with the council, where we had key people from the council and about 70 businesses, and, you know, a lot of good interaction and a good chance to network and meet people from the council. The council also run a variety of different networking events, so I would certainly, as part of your getting to know the council action, go along to these networking events, because the more you start to build the relationship, the better position you'll be in when you start bidding for contracts. Okay, so I just want to talk briefly about the one-to-ones, which I touched upon earlier. These are tailored sessions, personalized sessions for you and your business with a specialist like myself, where we'll go through literally a structured process to look at what are your key issues, what are your key challenges around bidding and tendering, and what actions do you need to take to actually move yourself forwards in that process. I mentioned that unfortunately the program ends and finishes at the end of February. So if you haven't had a one-to-one session, we literally have 1 or 2 more spaces left because we've put over 80 businesses through this one-to-one program. So if you want to take advantage of a one-to-one session and you're in the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, then I would suggest give me a call, literally, you know, today, tomorrow, and we'll try and get you squeezed in. But we have literally 1 or 2 more slots. But they're very structured sessions, and just to show you that we actually take the same advice that we give you is, I'm telling you they're great, but here are some testimonials from some of the clients and some of the SMEs who've been through the program. You don't need to sort of read it all word for word, but I think the common message that I've taken from a lot of the SMEs who provided feedback is, just the fact they've got someone to bounce ideas off, challenge their thought process, signpost them to people in the council, of course, give them technical expertise, keep them accountable, challenge your thinking. I think when you're running your own business, sometimes it can be quite lonely because you don't have enough people perhaps to sort of turn around for opinions and thoughts and just bounce ideas off them. So, as I said, if you haven't had a one-to-one, do contact me quickly and we'll try and get you in on one or two of the last spots that we have available. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat because someone's put something in there. Okay, someone's just had to dash out. No problem at all. No problem at all. Okay, well, I think we're just about at the end there. As I said, I hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope you've taken away something positive that you're going to do in your business. That's the key to all these sessions. It's all well and good spending an hour listening to me talk, and hopefully there's been some interesting information that you've taken. But what are you going to do about it? What's that one thing you're going to do to start moving your business forward? Are you going to register on the portal? Are you going to craft an email to Michael at the council, or pick up the phone to him and try and have a chat? Are you going to get some up-to-date Google reviews? Do that in your own time. Feel free to share it in the actions in the chat if you want, and do also feel free to put any feedback in the session in the chat as well as to how you found it. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Patricia. Thank you, Ron. It sounds like people have found it useful. That's critically important to me. I'm the sort of person who likes to make sure that there's been some value generated for you and your businesses as a result of these sessions. So, okay, that's just about it. I'm going to stick it. I'm just about on time. I'm going to stay around for 2 or 3 minutes. If you want to put anything in the chat in terms of feedback, we'd really appreciate that. If you want to put any questions in the chat that you didn't get a chance to answer, I'm going to stay around for a few minutes to answer those. Failing that, I wish you every success with your businesses, obviously in terms of your bidding and tendering sponsors. And yeah, if you haven't had those one-to-ones, get in touch with me quickly. I will just put my phone number in the chat. So I'll put my phone number and email in there. So if anyone wants to contact me for one-to-one, do it, but do it quickly. Right. Okay. So let's just. Great. I'm glad people have found it useful. Sounds like they have from the feedback in the chat. That's excellent. Thanks everyone for attending. And yeah, I'll wish you all the best for the rest of the week. And yeah, you have my details if you need any further help, information, or support. So have a great day, everyone, and all the best. Take care. Bye-bye.